series at the beginning of this year, and I got it done within 3.5 days. I was obsessed. What do you want from me? Twisted. I need to repaint my ceiling. It comes to light that she was having an affair with multiple men. Hint, hint, this is our vampire. Okay, I finally figured out how to make my tripod taller, so I stopped getting weird angles. Well, hello, I'm Erica. I am Odd. It is the first official wrap-up books I have read in 2026. I did my official 2025 wrap-up that I posted in 2026, but nevertheless, this is the first wrap-up of 2026. I'm excited for it. Let's get into it. I have my Goodreads on my iPad here, so... Oh, I got a new iPad. We'll talk about it next week. I have one physical book of all the books I read, but most of these were Kindle and audiobooks. Let's jump right into it. I have my list. Let's actually start. This isn't first book that I read of the year, but I do want to start with it just because it was my first DNF of the year. And that is Blood Over Brighthaven. This was actually for book club. So I am in a fantasy and romantasy book club, and this was the first read of the year. And the reason I DNF'd it was just because for me it was moving so slow. Will I pick up this book again? Yeah, maybe one day. I have like an hour left of it, so I don't see any reason why I wouldn't. But it had a pretty good magic system. It deals with a lot of social injustice, as a lot of fantasy books do that we know. There's usually like a corrupt government of some kind and somebody who wants to step up and be the hero for that. That is the premise for a lot of books like this. I didn't finish it just because it was moving so slow and it was so repetitive. It is a standalone, and I do see myself finishing it one day. I just think it was a DNF for me. So, all right, let's get back in order here. The first book and the first series that I read in 2026 is the Housemaid series. So, the movie came out, right? Haven't seen it yet. Want to, just haven't. I'll probably rent it. I wasn't rushing to the theater. I'm excited for it, but I wasn't like, I have to see this in theater like I have with several movies in February. Scream 7, going to see it. Good, because you're going. I've been watching a lot of Shoresy. But I read the Housemaid series at the beginning of this year, and I got it done within 3.5 days. I was obsessed. What do you want from me? Just a girl. I'd only read one Frida McFadden book in my whole life, and that was The Gift. And it's actually a novella. I debated whether or not I wanted to talk about this as a series or as each individual book, and I have decided on both because I, for the life of me, can't shut the up, so we're going to talk about it. So the first book, Housemaid, obviously I think is the best in the series. We have our two main characters, which are Millie and Nina. We follow both of their stories in the book from each person's POV, and then we have Andrew, Cece, and Enzo. I feel like I am the last person to read this, and it's obviously had a lot of hype recently with the movie coming out, so I knew I wanted to start this series on New Year's Day, and I actually finished the first book on January 1st. I started it technically New Year's Eve, right after I watched Stranger Things. I liked the psychological warfare in this a lot. So I was actually texting one of my best friends. She's a huge Frida fan, so she's read like all of her books. I would text her throughout the entire reading to be like, okay, I think that this is gonna happen, and I think that this is gonna be the reason. I, the whole time, thought that Nina was crazy because of the meds she was on. I thought that Andrew was like slipping her meds, that she was like slowly reacting and going insane. I could not have imagined the twist that came. However, I am glad the twist that was there twisted as well as it did. It's kind of hard to pull off a big plot twist like that, but thoroughly enjoyed it, and I think that everybody in the series got exactly what they deserved. And then I read The Housemaid's Secret. I was going into this one sort of like, I can't believe that this is a series because the first book was so good. I can't believe it's not like a standalone because of how intricate it was. And I was like, how is she possibly gonna have a twist on this that is so different from the first one? And I, again, was stunned. She did it again. Essentially in this one, Millie is working as a housemaid, going to school to become a social worker. She's obviously cleaning for houses, and she ends up to find herself in the middle of a homicide case. And it's all signs pointing to her, saying that she had an affair with this husband who had hired her, and his wife is a shut-in, and the only time Millie has ever seen her is with bruises on her faces, so she tries to help her escape. But the only problem is that is when Millie looks at the news, she's never actually seen that man before. And so the plot does thicken, and I have to say this plot twist was more insane than the first book's plot twist. It was crazy. Moving on to the next one, The Housemaid's Wedding. I'm gonna be honest with you guys, This one's cute, it's fun, it's a quick little in between the books to kind of see how Millie got where she is in book 3, because you do pick up and Millie is married to Enzo and she has 2 kids. Right? We skipped some levels. This book clears it up. However, do you have to read this book to read the 3rd book? No, you don't. You can skip it if you want. I don't see why you would though. It's like 2 hours for an audiobook and it'll help you get your reading goal up. However, the wedding was fun. I think it really explains the depth of Millie's relationship with her parents in the aftermath of her serving her time. It's a fun little read and it will get your reading goal up if you're running a little bit behind. It's only January, so don't stress. Moving on to the last book of the series, which is The Housemaid is Watching. And this one, for once, Millie is not a housemaid. She is a full-time social worker who is married to Enzo, who has his landscaping business, and they've just moved into a brand new home on Staten Island, because if you say in Staten Island, it's apparently very taboo and people, and the snotty moms will laugh at you. At least that's what they did to Millie. However, Millie has 2 children, an 11-year-old girl and a 9-year-old boy. I think that those were their ages. They moved there with high hopes of finally having a home and a safe place to raise their kids, only for Millie to go over and find the neighbor in a pool of his own blood. And so this book is sort of solving the mystery of like who took this guy out, who possibly could have done it. There's speculations of affairs, there's a very nosy neighbor. Millie actually has a housemaid herself who began stealing from her. It's a lot of moving parts in this book. There's a lot of characters to keep up with. This was probably my least favorite book because I predicted it. And I remember texting my best friend and she's like, I'm not gonna tell you what it is, but you're really smart. And I was like, thanks, babe. As predictable as it was very fun and it was a good way to sort of wrap up the series, I think. And it sort of gave that as happy as an ending sort of a morbid series like this can have. I did enjoy the entire series, and even though I just read it myself for the first time, if you're reading this for the first time, I'm very jealous of you. Just know that. Anyways, that is a Housemaid series. So next, I technically read this in between the novella and the 3rd Housemaid book because I needed like a break just mentally. I was like, I need just something fluffy. I read my first hockey book of 2026 in my hockey era. It is essentially about a hockey player and a hockey podcaster who's also in the bookish community. She's learned that the hockey player Bennett Wilder has started a hockey romance book club where he'll sit down and talk about hockey romance books that he's read and why he likes them, more of a virtual thing. And that makes our main character Lucy Quinn sick. So she goes on her podcast and she expresses, hey, I think this PR stunt is a joke. I think that this is just a PR stunt. And she's like, hey, I think that this is really like you're putting women in a box thinking that they would only care about hockey because of hockey romance books. And this is wrong. And so in order to stop a boycott that Lucy started, the hockey's PR team is like, hey, both of you go on your podcast together. This will be good ratings for you, be good PR for us, read the books and have an open dialogue about it. It's very much an enemies to lovers, public feud, private dating sort of situation. I did give this one 3 stars. However, it was a cute hockey romance. I didn't hate it, but I gave it 3 stars mostly because it wasn't like a life-changing romance book. It wasn't a favorite. It did exactly what I wanted it to do, which was take my mind somewhere else after reading the Housemaid series. I have to stretch. Oh my god. Oh. If you guys ever wondered like how I sit up straight for so long while I film these, I do this. I need to repaint my ceiling. I'm back. So again, if you're like me and you're just looking for something in between more intense books, that might be your vibe. Moving on to the Southern Book Club's Guide for Slaying Vampires. This is the only physical book that I read this month. I also listened to it. If you're like, where's all the physical books from your thumbnail? I needed a thumbnail. I don't have all 11 books I read. However, I do have this one. I started this back over the summer, I think, right? Whenever I finished Witchcraft for Wayward Girls, I started this. I got to chapter 9 and I didn't pick it back up. And so I decided that I really wanted to finish this. I really enjoyed the complexities of it. I did give this 5 stars. This has very, very serious subject matter. You need to read the trigger warnings. This is not Twilight Vampire. This is an evil vampire. This is evil incarnate of what we know vampires to be from folklore. I love Grady because he's very honest about what he writes. And here's the thing that you have to understand understand about Grady. Grady is not going to hold back and he's not going to sugarcoat it just to make people more comfortable. So a big subject matter in this is that there is this man, and I think a lot of this subject matter is actually very metaphorical for things that were happening at the time. This takes place in the 80s and 90s surrounding a book club who read these very morbid books, right? About like Ted Bundy and like the Zodiac and a bunch of like true crime stuff. That's like their thing. And vampires aside, throughout the series, the husbands basically decide to take over the book club and make it a bunch of World War II reads because what the women read is, and I quote, too morbid. As if everything about World War II wasn't, but I digress. That was like one of the most tragic parts of this book, was that their book club got stolen from them. It's basically a group of women, specifically around Patricia Campbell. At the beginning of the book, she is taking care of her very elderly mother-in-law, and her elderly neighbor down the street she finds rummaging through her trash cans, and her neighbor actually came up and bit her, and then passed away a few hours later. But her seemingly nephew has shown up in town in his white van, and he can go out in the sun, but he has a condition where he gets sunburnt very easily. The light hurts his eyes, so they mostly see him at night. Hint, hint, this is our vampire. They notice strange going-ons with the children around town. It all started happening when this guy got to town, and it basically falls into years of this man being there and making these big promises of grandeur, of he will make the town rich and everybody's investing their money into them and its business is great and it's wonderful. Meanwhile, this man is just evil. This vampire does not have redeeming qualities. This is not a vampire that you're going to fall in love with. This is not a vampire that is suave. This book gets dark very fast. But I think what it is, mostly metaphorically, at least in my opinion, is it's showing this sort of epidemic that we had of these people in white vans in the 80s and 90s going around and harming children. That is what I feel that he is representative of, is this evil phenomenon that was happening in the 80s and 90s. It was happening long before then, and it's still happening now. However, being in the 80s and 90s, you only had word of mouth when things like this were happening around town with very little evidence. I thought that this was also a really empowering book of like, these mothers came together. We are going to stop this vampire by any means necessary, even if it means sacrificing myself. I am going to stop this vampire. And it was so satisfying in that sense to see them all come together. Even if one didn't believe the other in certain times, or maybe somebody had a falling out, they all came together to say, we're going to stop this evil so that this place can be a safe place for our families and our kids again. And it was beautiful in that way. I love the way that Grady writes about female friendships and just the powerful bonds of them. I really loved it. Okay, the next one I read is Blonde Hair, Blue Eyes. And this is actually a prequel to the book Pretty Girls. I want to read Pretty Girls. It's on my Libby, it's on my hold shelf, so I'm waiting for that to come in. However, I enjoyed this book. I think that it is important. I think it actually gave me a lot of context to one of the characters that we don't, from what I understand, see a whole lot of in Pretty Girls. However, still haven't read it, so I have no idea. I gave it a 5-star because it's very to the point. Again, it talks on a lot of very serious subject matters. I do think that a lot of books can benefit to a prequel. Okay, next up we have The Perfect Marriage. I was so excited for this book. I love Geneva Rose. I love her writing style, so I decided to read The Perfect Marriage and The Perfect Divorce. They do go together. So again, another 5-star series. I absolutely love just a good twist. I can honestly say in the first book, I did not predict the twist that was coming. One or two factors were a bit predictable, however, the main plot points and the main twist were so shocking to me that I could not wait to devour The Perfect Divorce. We follow Sarah Morgan, who is the main character in both books. Her husband, Adam, has been arrested for his mistress's untimely death, and this entire book is basically about her coping with the fact that he had a mistress and now she has to prove his innocence in trial so that he basically like doesn't get the chair. A lot of this is unraveling of like who his mistress really was. It comes to light that she was having an affair with multiple men, and basically Sarah the entire time is sort of trying to deal with the betrayal of her husband while still keeping a legal efficacy and trying to get him to be seen as innocent. Now the twist in this book, I will say, I did kind of see coming. I had an idea of like, yeah, I think that this person did it, but I didn't know how. And so I did enjoy the twist where it was finally revealed how they did in fact do it. And in The Perfect Divorce, we're still following Sarah. It's about 11, maybe 12 years after her ex-husband Adam was convicted and was given lethal injection. So Sarah is now married to Bob and divorcing Bob because guess what? Bob cheated. Meanwhile, she's going through this messy divorce. They're bringing the kid into it. The kid is miserable. We're getting POVs of a woman who is trapped in a basement. And the whole book sort of switches between Sarah's POV, Bob's POV, and this woman's POV. And this twist, I knew who had to do with it. I just didn't know how. And again, the intricacies of how it was all explained and how this entire plot came together, I think I was more impressed than I was with the plot twist in the first book. Like, this one really blew my mind. That was a 5-star series for me. And then the last book for the 11 books that I read in January is Unsteady. I have been wanting to read this book for so long. I have Unloved in my Libby right now. I'm so excited. So I've been wanting to read that for a long time. Again, hockey player, ice skater. It's giving icebreaker vibes at first. However, Reese is a hockey player that is recovering from an injury, and Sadie is a figure skater with a very, very complicated life. So again, all of these, everything I read, always look up the trigger warnings, okay? This, I don't know if I would describe this as necessarily an enemies to lovers, but it's more of a misunderstanding of who one another is at the beginning. And I do like sort of how they slowly fall in love, because in most hockey books, right, it's you get together and you have a spat for a few chapters and then suddenly you're deeply in love and everything makes sense and everything's so easy moving forward because you're doing it together. We got a hyper independent girly over here in Sadie, and we have Reese who just wants to help but doesn't know how. And it's one of those things of you have to trust the process and trust the fact that this person is going to do what they say and stick around and be there for you. And it's something I think a lot of people struggle with, especially in new relationships, of like, okay, well, are you full of shit? Or are you actually going to be here when things get hard? I think it's very much a beautiful story about two people learning how to love when they kind of struggle to even love themselves at times. And it was just this really beautiful romance of two people just being completely, totally open with each other. And it was really, really refreshing for a hockey romance. I did give it 4 stars. I loved it. It was adorable. Highly recommend it. And I cannot wait to read Unloved. I think that it's gonna be so good. But that is everything I read in January of 2026, all 11 books. I'm on a roll. I'm not gonna lie to you guys, I am on a roll. Let me know in the comments down below everything that you guys read for January. Do you have anything that you read in January that like changed your life that I have to put on the TBR? Let me know down below. Please be sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye guys.